I'll try and go through all of them. So the very first question is about life before key data. The question then is, can you tell me about your business, such as how you manage properties, and where exactly you operate? So just an introduction into Anglesey Holiday Lettings, please.
Yeah, I can fire away on that one. So I kind of set this business up accidentally. I had no history whatsoever within the industry when I set up my own holiday lets in an area where we operate of Anglesey, and just started advertising it online and just looked at other bits of competition to see where I should be with my pricing, and just threw some figures at it, and off I went. And then 6 months later, someone said, "Would you like to look after mine?" And here we are now. We have a purposely small portfolio of 95 because we offer a full in-house turnkey event for the owners, and so we have no interest in being 1,000 strong. But as time has gone on over the years, we've gone from a spreadsheet and where Emma and I would sit around a table and put our properties in a order of merit, an order of pricing, an order of occupancy, and throw a spreadsheet together to try and work out the pricing and how to get the occupancy up. And we then created, as the years went on, we created a massive spreadsheet where we called it the enemy data. But remind me, what did we call it? What was the actual name of it, Emma?
Competitive matrix.
That's it, the competitive matrix. So basically, we'd pick 10 houses in Rossnagar of 2 beds, 3 beds, 4 beds, etc., and then the same in the other areas. And we'd look at them, and we'd have a hyperlink across to their property. And then what felt like weeks on end every year, reviewing their pricing and comparing ours. And it was an absolutely mammoth task. And just trying to put our portfolio into an order of what it should be price wise. It's not an easy task, and it was very, very onerous. So we'd gone from the back of a fag packet onto spreadsheets, and those spreadsheets just grew and grew and grew, and it was just a very, very confusing space. And the only way we could capture that data was either from our own PMS on our own portfolio, and then go literally online to booking.com, Airbnb, Holiday Lettings, all those different sites, and just do direct comparisons. So the STR industry has evolved massively in the last 3 to 4 years, technology-wise. So when we then were introduced to key data, that's when how we actually operated completely changed for us. Anything to add about the history there, Emma?
No, you're right. I mean, to be fair, we started off with it being a small-ish spreadsheet, although I'm pretty sure you probably wouldn't say it was small.
Yeah. But yeah, 17 tabs and
it was
3,000 entries.
Direct, yeah. And then we were comparing them against ours, low, mid, and high season, and just getting an idea or a rough idea of where we fitted in the marketplace when people were searching. But yeah, it grew and it evolved, because the more we grew and the more houses we had across the island, we then started looking at different areas, and that just, it made the spreadsheet grow into a behemoth task and just project. And to the point we ended up, we wrote some of the guest service girls in, didn't we? We wrote a few different people in to help us complete this task once a quarter, just to make sure we were where we wanted to be performing. And, and if we spotted a couple of houses that were less than ours and we might have been overpriced, it did allow us to get some of that data. But because everyone was updating their prices, whether they were using dynamic pricing or whether they were just doing what we were doing and manually going in and adjusting, things had changed within that 1 quarter. So like what might have been right at the time where we're going, oh, we were overpriced, at the start we might not have been, and depending on the lead time of the booking, we could have been just right. But because we didn't have that past historical data that key data allows us to look at and to see things changing over time, it allows us to have I can pop in today and see how we're doing. I can pop in tomorrow and that data's there. Whereas with the old spreadsheet, that just wasn't wasn't possible unless I literally spent my entire job role every day going
And
in
it was
these millions.
quite recent, actually, Emma, isn't it? I mean, I think we gave up the competitive matrix in 2022. We just before COVID, we tapped into, obviously I'm not going to name names, but we tapped into a dynamic pricing piece of software. And it was okay, but it didn't quite align with how we offer short breaks. So this piece of software could only work off of ADR, couldn't work off of percentages. So what I mean by that is we offer short breaks, 3-day break at 82%, say. That piece of software, 82% of the full week price, sorry. But that piece of software would only divide the week by 7 and then times it by 3. Well, that maths doesn't add up. We couldn't do it. So we had a piece of software that was doing our pricing for us that could only work on the ADR rather than percentages. So we had to swiftly move. We had to have a manual fix to that. And we ran with that for about 6 months, and then it became intolerable. So we then stumbled across another piece of software, dynamic pricing, which we thought was the answer to our prayers. Well, unfortunately, where we are now is completely different to where we were then, because what was happening was it was that piece of software was scraping its data from all of the OTAs as well as the operators. Well, the operators also have owner bookings, they also have maintenance bookings, and OTAs have uplifts, and that doesn't show what's an owner booking and everything else. And what we discovered was that it wasn't benchmarking correctly, and it was feeding us false information. And for one example was during the period of, I think it was May, June, and July of about 2 years ago, where Airbnb were not feeding the information, not allowing the scraping to happen. So what was happening was my software was saying, you're empty in June. You know, they were recording something like about 22% occupancy when we were at about 90. So what was happening was for next year's pricing, it was dive bombing it. And in one night, we accepted bookings where we lost 35 grand in revenue overnight, one night. It caused me absolute heartache. So we then looked at an alternative way of sourcing this information. So we went to one of your competitors and we signed up for that. But lo and behold, what we discovered was there is just not enough information for rural properties that was being scraped for whatever reason. The figures, they just couldn't scrape the data. So it was giving everyone false readings, and it was underselling and overselling. We had one property that had never sold for more than £1,000 a month, and it was being advertised for 1,500 because the algorithm was just all over the place. So we had to act. And that's when we then went back to having conversations with human beings and saying, what is the solution here? And the solution was, it was a multifaceted problem that needed intervention from not only human, but AI and raw data and everything else. So that's when our journey of a human being with a lot of AI tools and key data began. And that's how we've got to where we were up until 2-3 days, or last week, sorry.
Excellent. That's a really good introduction and explanation in terms of what you've been doing there. So thank you. And I think you've touched on a number of points that we're going to cover later on. So may ask you to repeat some of those or go into them in more detail. But what I'm curious about is you've mentioned their tracking performance, enemy data, or the competitive matrix. I prefer enemy data, but
that's the military in me coming out, I'm afraid, because that's what you do in the military. You cannot direct your own forces if you do not know what the enemy are doing.
Okay. I just like the hostility towards the data. So I know you were tracking it then. That sounds very, very manual and time consuming. In terms of reporting it then, taking that information, reporting it internally and specifically to owners, what did that look like? Like, how did you do that?
I'll answer on the owner side and Emma can answer the rest of it. My relationship with my owners, predominantly, we know them all. You know, I know their kids. I go for a pint with them. I'll go for a coffee with them. I speak to them regularly. There's only a couple that I haven't got that relationship with, but we have built a brand over the years where the owners just go, you know what you're doing. There are sometimes, you know, there's a couple of people out there that go, oh, well, we could have got more, and I can justify it. The trust was there, which made it easy. If the trust wasn't there, I simply could not have justified it without being able. It's that expression, isn't it? Without data, you've just got an opinion. Well, I had an opinion and I had trust. And that's what got us through. But if someone actually picked at it, like the tax man does, I think it would have fallen apart. So actually, for me, yeah, it was really difficult to explain. They knew we were doing our best, but actually it wasn't good enough. And my thoughts.
Yeah, I remember there was the odd occasion where you would say to me, I need more information on competitors for this property. And they might have been underperforming, or they're new and they just want a bit more reassurance or something like that. We never really had that request much, but you did sometimes ask me for that. And then that again would be me diving more around a specific, whether it's a 2-bed, 3-bed, 4-bed or location, seeing what's around there and what's available. And then I'd, again, like I said, look at low, medium and high peak pricing and do like an average and performance. But then the fault with that, and like Jamie says, it was never accurate, because when you do go onto any website, like even if you went onto ours, you'll see everything's grayed out, but you've no idea. Not everything's grayed out, but most things are grayed out because it's booked. But you as a guest don't know, or as another business looking at another business's website, whether that's all guest bookings or how much of that might be for owners, or how much of that might be for maintenance or compliance that gets closed down. So it was all right me going to Jamie, oh yeah, we're at 80% occupancy, they're only at 60, or this one's at 90% occupancy. I didn't know the true value of that occupancy data. So that was always a bit of a pain. So sometimes we did do a bit more of a narrow specific search, but it wasn't really that often, because like you said, the owners trusted you. It was only if we did somehow just stop getting a little bit of bookings, or if it was a new property and we wanted to make sure we were getting the pricing right for a new onboard, especially if it was in a new area that we hadn't ventured into, or if it was like a much larger property than we've ever had before, just to see what's in the area and what's a similar pricing. And you know, what's good, what's not, a sort of thing to go for. So yeah, I never really presented it much to the owners, but I did present it to Jamie, and I think I got blurry-eyed from him quite a few times. I'm
the technophobe in the business, I'm afraid. Yeah.
it was a big spreadsheet. I know what I'm doing and everything like that. But so when I might name certain columns or charts or graphs, Jamie's just like, what is that? And then when I explained it, he's like, well, why don't you just call it that? But when I wrote it at the time, it made sense to me because my head's in the data and I'm seeing all of that. So there was sometimes some fun little issues with that, with just my terming and wording. But yeah, it was just a beast. And then it would literally be, yeah, Jamie, I'd go through it all and I'd say, look, I think we've got a problem possibly with these ones where we're underpriced and stuff like that. But that's how we used to just literally go around doing it. After we'd spend like a week, if not longer, going through all the data, like updating the data, I'd then sit and analyze it and then look at it and kind of go, yeah, well, I think we're okay with that. I think we're okay, and give Jamie a bit of a brief overview going, yeah, we're okay. We're in the percentage figures for this, you know, we've got this much of a margin. And then like with some of the properties, like we need to uplift, or I think we're possibly a bit too overly priced for that one because that occupancy is higher. Again, don't know how accurate the occupancy data is, but we could do with lowering it because several other properties have got a lower pricing strategy.
But reporting that was impossible. You know, two issues we had was, firstly, without a pricing tool, like a dynamic pricing tool or any pricing tool, the PMS that we have, the manual labor involved in putting all those prices into the PMS was a complete and utter epic. And we just found ourselves using the dynamic. We would intervening when we did have the dynamic pricing tool. We were manually intervening every day, every 2 minutes to set it right, because it was just going haywire. But we needed it because it populated the super control or the PMS price planners, which is just another epic. But I had no way of reporting it to owners. It was via an email. This is how you're doing. This is how your competition's doing. So, again, what we have now has been a game changer for
that. That's a excellent feedback in terms of what we're able to help you with now. So thank you. It sounds to me like you'd spend as much time, if not more, on gathering and just presenting the data than analyzing and acting upon it. So yeah. Sounds like a massive shift there. The challenges that I'm hearing there is in that part of it, in the data gathering side. And then it's the impact that you have from that as well. So it's like how you can kind of effectively prove value to owners, just having a clear picture on the market and making pricing adjustments. I feel like that covers the impact from a data side, but was there any other like challenges that you'd run into on a daily basis as a result of those, as a result of the data situation?
For me, I felt like I didn't have, and we can come on to what we have now, but for me as a business owner, I just felt that my finger wasn't on the pulse. I'd have to spend X amount of what felt like days to update myself with what's going on in the market. That's massive. Because when you're a business owner and you're doing what we do, because we've got everything in-house, laundry, housekeeping, maintenance, arrival essentials, guest services, revenue management, marketing, revenue. It's for us, it's massive. But the simple fact of the matter is that the tipping point for this business is whether you are occupying and selling or not. So felt like I was having to spend so much time on making sure that we had money coming in through occupancy. And now I've got you've seen it, James, we can talk about this in a bit. I have a screen sat right next to me that has got it's got my screen with key data, and I am updating myself every 5 minutes when I look at it. So I know what's going on in the portfolio. I know what's going on in the competition. Whereas before, the issue I had was once a week I was having to pile in, and our Monday morning meetings were just to update ourselves on how we're performing. Emma would give us my top 3, my bottom 3. And my front desk would give me all my review status and tell me any problem children. And then another department would tell me something. Now, all of a sudden, I'm not having to spend that time. So for me, the biggest piece was not just about the pricing. It was also about being kept up to date with, and my finger on the pulse with what is actually going on. Where are my KPIs? Well, my KPIs is ADR. My KPI is RevPAR, guest booking numbers, my entire revenue. What's the pacing doing? That for me to pile in now without the software that we have, well, that's me and Emma tied up for a week. You can't do that. That's not tenable.
Oh, well, I used to have a gazillion different spreadsheets anyway, didn't I? Because you wanted on Monday mornings to know, before key data, how are we doing this month compared to bookings we got a year ago for this month and stuff like that. So I used to have to physically go into our PMS, pull certain data, which sometimes was nice and quick, sometimes takes an absolute age and a day. And then so I had several different spreadsheets that I updated, one weekly, one monthly, one quarterly. I was doing all this information, trying to pull it all through. I was on Google Analytics, had its own little spreadsheet because I was going through looking at which houses are doing particularly well for page views. I had it was just my own little way of keeping up to date with the business because it is all in our PMS, which is great. But if we want it in a nice kind of easy to read format, and I can go to Jamie, look, here's a percentage, we're up by 3% or we're down by 4%. I had conditional formatting all set up. So we got more of a monthly snapshot with where we were going. But again, on top of the competitive matrix, having my monthly, my weekly, all these different booking lead time, the lead time's gone down, all these different spreadsheets. A lot of my time genuinely was spent in data creating these spreadsheets, whereas now, because it's all on there, it's freed me up massively.
But bearing in mind, Emma's been working with us since, so Emma came to work for us when she was, what do you call it? Not intern. It's an intern, isn't it?
Oh, I was working at, We Localise.
We Localise after her master's. And her background is marketing. So she came and ran a little bit part-time work for us, running, like I said, we set this up on the back of a fag packet. Emma
media,
was doing social media and everything, and then all of a sudden she became the spreadsheet queen. And it was, oh Jesus! I honestly, it would be really interesting to go back to our old SharePoint to see all the spreadsheets that you used to have to run. It was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah,
that's wonderful. I bet you don't miss them, eh?
No, I just do love data though. I do love, like, when James asked me for some other information, which means I get to pull some stuff from Super Control. So I'm kind of like, yeah, I'll dig into that data.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, look, we're about halfway through, and we've cleared the first points. There's 4 more points, but loving the answers. So thank you. The second bit we're moving on to now is like deciding to use key data. The first 2 points I feel like we've covered in that, but you let me know. The first question is, what made you decide to look for a tool like key data? The second one is, was there a specific problem or moment that pushed you to try it? So if there's any points you want to answer on that one, let me know. Otherwise, I can move on to the next question.
Okay, so the deciding point of knowing that we needed something was when my dynamic pricing tool failed. The dynamic pricing tool failed abysmally. I was losing money or leaving money on the table because we were too high in some areas, which left occupancy, and we were too low in areas which left me with unhappy owners. Emma was away on maternity leave, and I'm trying to get my head around some of the spreadsheets that she's left me, and I was genuinely completely overwhelmed of what I needed to do. And when you're trying to direct a business that is, as busy as ours, spinning the 1,000 plates that we do, and the additional issues, I didn't know where to turn. So I actually spoke to my PMS. I spoke to my PMS first, and then I spoke to someone that we use as a business consultant that I think James Richard, and said, right, well, how do I push this forward? What do I do? And it was our PMS that said, are you aware of this feature that we have? And I was like, wow, okay, let's look at this. And at the time, I'm always very wary of sharing my data, as anyone should be, really. It's quite a hot topic for Emma and I at the moment with one of our OTAs that we don't use many OTAs, and we're at around about we tail around about the 80% mark of direct bookings. But I needed to have some information at hand so that I could make some decisions. And that's when we got introduced into key data. And that's when I started looking into it. And then that's when I was at scale where I met Sally Henry. And then I met you, James. And between you told me, hey, look, we've got this tool. What are you doing to get this information? Because we can provide this and we can do that. And all of a sudden, every question I asked, key data appeared to have an answer to it. And where you didn't have an answer or a solution, you had the answer of, do you know what, but we're developing this, we are developing that. And in this world, when someone says to me, we're looking at developing that, it usually means it's not going to happen. But actually, before I then decided to go with key data, one of the things that was in development happened. And I went, okay, so let's give this a go. So I then signed up for the basic dashboard of key data, and the rest is history for me. And so when Emma was on maternity, I was sending these emails to her, knowing that she's not going to see them. But on her first day back to work, she's opened up this massive atom bomb in her inbox, and it was a massive learning curve. But we did purposely hold off on a couple of key data options until Emma came returned back to work, as you know. But yeah, so that's the history of how we got into it.
Perfect. Love it. Thank you. So with that then, with first getting started, I'd love to know, like, what reports or features did you find yourself using the most at the beginning? So you can talk about like specific reports or dashboards, and I see some smiles now. I'm curious.
So Emma at this point is still on leave, okay?
It was the old key data style dashboards as well. I can't remember the names of some of the dashboards we had set up on the old style.
Yeah, but when I took it on, I opened it up and I was like, switch it off, switch it off. It's another piece of software, I can't handle it. And then I eventually just started having a nose around. And I'll be brutally honest with you, I was just familiarizing myself with it. I didn't really understand its full capabilities whatsoever. And I didn't want to implement anything, change of process or anything within the business, because actually the technical side of things, it's Emma. It always has been Emma. And I said, look, I'll just familiarize myself around it, not use anything of it other than just see. When Emma's back, we'll look at it in detail and what can we do. And then Emma took that on, and all yours, Emma.
Okay, I'm trying to think back to the old style. So when we first started using it, we definitely looked at it in terms of, we weren't on an ADR model, but we did use the data from that. Because at that point we weren't on an ADR model, we were still using percentages for short breaks and everything like that. But the occupancy and the tracking of how we're performing was fantastic, because like I said, we would use that dashboard and look at it again. Can't remember what it was called, but that's the one that saved me having to create the monthly, the quarterly spreadsheets and everything like that. It allowed us to see our performance, our occupancy levels for the first quarter of this year. I could go back. I mean, at that point, I don't think I could go back too far, but it allowed us then to monitor going forwards how we were doing. This time, so I can go back now on years of data within key data and kind of go, okay, this quarter compared to this quarter last year, how are we doing? What's working? What's not working? One of the big things we've noticed, and it's really great now we've got the benchmarking data, because we've noticed such a short lead time for bookings this year compared to previous. I mean, it's always typically been short out of season, but it's becoming more short in season as well. But, it's nice to see that, it's affecting all of the businesses. All of the businesses are seeing that. It's not just a random anomaly that might be happening or to us. So it's good to see, because it's, certain businesses do offer as well, book now for an X%, or they'll do introductory offers, or they'll say, special offer, it was £2,000, it's now £100. It's interesting to see that even though some of these businesses offer these promotions and offers, their lead time is still the same as ours. So it's kind of good to know, even from like a marketing strategy point of view, that we think, oh yeah, let's maybe consider this discount. But yeah, it might bring in some more bookings, but it's not going to massively affect lead time and other elements like that. So that was what we used to use it. We did do some comp sets on the old dashboard as well. And we played around with some of those, focusing on bed sizes and regions. But on the new one now, I have a few that I stick to. I think you stick on your year-on-year snapshot, Jamie, I think is what.
Yeah, that's it. But that's great. That's all I need. But back when we first took on key data, it was answering some very basic but key questions. Where am I today, booking number wise, compared to where I was last year? What was the lead time last year compared to today? What's my revenue today compared to last year? All those real simple answers that give you comfort in what you're doing. It doesn't help you, just by looking at a glance. It didn't help me go, I've got a problem with that property. It was giving me, without delving in, but it was just giving me a very basic, quick KPI snapshot, how we're doing. And that's what I used to use key data for initially, which is completely different to what we use it for today.
Yeah, I've got several different ones. I've got school year one, so 24 to 25, and that focuses on the half-term date. So I specifically look at, the Christmas holiday versus the Christmas holiday last year. What's our ADR? What's our occupancy, guest check-ins, owner check-ins? Because, have we got more owner bookings? Is that why we're getting less guest bookings? Because the occupancy is less. So we focus on some, it's my key snapshot into the key holidays and the key booking periods for our business. So I've got 24, 25, 25, 26, and I love the fact that you can adjust them so it's not the set time period each year, because holidays do shift by weeks, especially Easter, sometimes by quite a few weeks. So that data I use quite a lot, and I share that with the team every Monday. I'll take a snapshot, a screenshot, and just say, look, this is where we're currently trending for. So we're looking at October now, because that's the next holiday coming up, where our occupancy is at, and stuff like that. And then we'll start to look to Christmas. So that one's a really handy one. We have what I call a Monday morning data one, which is where I get all my Monday morning data from. And that's where I look at the top 3 performing houses and the bottom 3 performing houses. And I share that with the team. So you always want to know who's doing really well, and that kind of they all rotate, which is fabulous. But one of the, not a problem, but prior to using key data, we got that information from Super Control. And it was accurate, but it meant more time was delving into looking at all, whereas now it's great that you can filter by guest occupancy, owner occupancy, and get that right information, because some properties can be 100% occupied, but then it's 100% occupied by owner because it's shut off for renovations. But that's handy, and especially for the bottom 3, it allows us to then look at those 3 and go, well, why are they in the bottom 3? What's the actual occupancy score? What's that percentage? How much of that percentage is owner bookings? If it's 0, okay, why is that low? What can we do? It kind of just allows us to evaluate what's happening at the bottom of the mixture. So not always going, oh yeah, this is doing great, we're doing really well with that. It lets us dive a bit more deeper into little parts, really. And then they're never at 0, which is fantastic. But it lets us see it and kind of go, okay, let's have a look at that property. Why is it down there? Is it because what's coming up? What seasons are coming up? What holidays have we got coming up? Is there a holiday like summer? What's the pricing? Have we not opened it up for short breaks? So it's just double checking, is that everything working in our PMS? We have the fun problem with the dots, which can affect things sometimes. And then that's to do with our PMS. And then, we look at it, but the whole point, we share it with the team, because then guest services will look at the reviews and kind of go, all right, let's dive into the reviews. Have we had any bad reviews? If we've got a bad review, what's the problems they complain about? Is it housekeeping? Let's get housekeeping involved. Are you aware of X, Y, and Z issue? If there was an issue, what you can do going forwards to resolve those issues? If there's a problem with the shower's broken or whatever, or we get maintenance involved. Every department gets involved in looking at the bottom properties and kind of going, all right, what can we do to increase their occupancy over the next couple of weeks? So I pull the bottom 3 every 2 weeks, because it gives us a chance for whatever we're doing to take effect before pulling it again. And then obviously it allows us then to identify if we do have any particular problem children, whereas over the course of 2 months, if a certain property's appeared in there repeatedly, then we kind of go, all right, there's a bigger problem at play here. Let's dive into this and figure out what's causing that. But yeah, I mean, like I said, occupancy is never at 0. We like to have a set particular occupancy that we aim for every property, and that's even out of peak season. We never want to be below a particular percentage, in the quieter months. It's inevitable sometimes with some properties, but it just allows us to focus on that rather than getting lost in the weeds of kind of going, all right, we're doing really well, how can we do better? It allows us to not forget about particular houses or things like that. So every owner feels like, their house is getting the attention, whether they're one of the top, whether they're in the middle, whether they're at the bottom, because they all rotate. And that's the great thing. They do rotate. There isn't ever really a problem with one property appearing multiple times in the bottom 3.
When we took on key data, only Emma and I would use it. That has changed, and we can talk about that a little bit later. That has changed.
Yeah. And then I got a ton of other dashboards, but I don't know how much you want me to go into.
No, well, I mean, my limit's time, but I'm happy to hear as much as you have to say about it. It's I'd love to. I said we wouldn't play the full hour for the but I really think that everything you guys are saying, it's really nice to hear fills me with a lot of like positivity and you know, about the product as well. I love to hear how you guys are using it. I think I'm mindful again, just of time. The next question is about like how key data fits into the rest of your tech stack, but you've gone into it there in terms of the bottom three, and it sounds to me, I'm using an example there, but it sounds to me like and correct me if I'm wrong, but the key data is driving that conversation or starting the conversation. So it's easily identifying the bottom three that you then use as a way of saying, okay, this is a priority now with the review team, with the cleaning team, with the others. Or can it oftentimes happen the other way around, like a bad review will then prompt you to look into key data? I'm just trying to understand the...
It's not just... So I think the answer to that question is not quite the answer to that question, if you know what I mean. For me, key data now has changed and drives different processes. We're now operating differently. Okay. I think when we're looking at key data now, it's offering me as the business owner much simpler, easier, and more accurate reporting to owners. It's helping us identify our weak spots, whether that's with pricing, underperforming properties. It helps us identify whether we got the copy wrong. When we're looking at the figures in performance, it's forcing us not to ignore something or miss something. So, and it's not just about the reports, it's about us seeing something going red. Why is that going red? When our dotted line of performance is going below our competitors, it just forces us to dig deep. Whereas before, you spot these things when it's too late. It's, you know, all of a sudden you're doing a report for an owner in March and you're going, ooh, we didn't do too well this year, did we?
It's allowing us to be more proactive than reactive.
Absolutely. So we've gone from this manual spreadsheet through to the KPIs in front of us, the ability to dig deep without having to deep research within our PMS. It's telling us if we're going wrong, and all of our processes have changed because of what information we've now got at hand. And you know, Emma's got 20 reports, I've probably got 2, but between them all, our entire team now can use key data. You know, my laundry department, housekeeping department can look at key data and go, last year I had 2 members of staff working in the laundry because we had X amount this week, or next week, but we're up 50%. That means I've got to have 50% more laundry. I need to get more staff in. So it's not just about looking at data and seeing your performance. It's actually then using it as a tool to plan and to identify issues. So it's just become a key player within our business.
Excellent. That is great to hear. So thank you very much for that. And the next part, I actually think we can go through this relatively quickly, impact, because we've got impact left, which is talking about the impact it's had in your business, and you've touched on a ton of points there. Then it's competitive advantage.
If key data wasn't around now, I would have to find a replacement. Okay. Now, whether that comes from the PMS, whether that comes from a human being or whatever else. So the answer to it is, I could not quantify how much time it saved us, because it's too massive to measure.
Yeah.
Okay. It's too big a thing to measure how much time it saved us. And on top of that, the advantages that it's brought us are also very large. So I couldn't quantify that either. So, you know, I could now not operate without key data. Simple fact. I would have to employ someone if I wanted that information, because the simple fact of the matter is there is plenty of data out there, but it is not accurate enough. So having accurate data that's got excellent benchmarking now, all right, is completely invaluable. Absolutely is. So, you know, if you're not using key data, thanks, because we're using it as a competitive tool and we're using it to its best, you know. And when my revenue manager comes to me and says, thank you for that Christmas present, all right, to Emma, thank you for it. It was like unwrapping a big Christmas present. And this is a man that's been in this business for over 20 odd years. For him to say that, he refused to use key data until the benchmarking was sorted. He didn't even look at it. He was like, no, I'm not interested. The benchmarking is not good enough. And for him now, he now is piling into it. And this is a bloke that is using tools from, he is a, I don't say I called him a geek, but this man knows software inside and out. And for him to actually say, wow, excellent. And he's now using this. And he came to us and sent us a video through. He's been hounding us to take on the OTA, booking.com. Now, managing booking.com is a pain in the backside for anyone. And he's been going, you need booking.com, you need booking.com. And then literally within a day of being in key data, he said, yeah, don't worry about booking.com. There's not enough business on the island for booking.com. It's not performing on the island, sack it off. So actually, you know, we've now got, and I go back to what I said.
It's completely flipped his perception.
Yes, we've gone from Emma and I using key data and Emma being the deep specialist in it to all of a sudden everyone in the business wanting a little piece of the action because they can actually plan, identify all those things. So too big a product for me to be able to say how much has that saved me. It's invaluable.
Excellent. So I love that answer, and I think it's easier for me when I'm reaching out to people to say it saves you X amount of hours. You've given me a more complex thing to say there, but I think what you're saying is it's too simple of an answer to say it's more complex in terms of the shift that it's had in your business and more meaningful. So I love that there. Okay, thank you. I think you've covered the impact side of things really well. 10 minutes left. Are you able to go a little bit over if we need to? Time.
Absolutely.
Smashing. Thank you. So on the competitive side of things then, I'd love to know then, and you did say it, but I'll ask you again, is before us, have you used any other data tools? That can include specific data tools or dynamic pricing tools. What was your experience with them?
So I'm trying to remember what, I'm joking. So I think I took on Price Labs when Emma was on maternity leave, I believe, because I had to do something about our pricing, because without Emma, all this information was overwhelming, massively overwhelming. So we took on Price Labs because we thought that was going to be the solution to our answers, to capture all this data. And then we had this problem, what Price Labs had at the time, which I now know they've resolved. They couldn't work on percentages. All right, they had to work on ADR. And so we couldn't use Price Labs for short breaks. We had to do a manual intervention, which was quite onerous. We then swapped across to Beyond Pricing, the dynamic pricing tool. And for the first 12 months, it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Very, very expensive. You know, we're talking a 1% commission. And they were a great team. They were really on side. But they then started to struggle scraping the data. And like I said earlier on, that was resulting in inaccurate occupancy reports. If you get a lower occupancy report, in simple terms, it drives revenues down. If you get over occupancy reports, it drives the revenues up. And what was happening was when it was a defined 100% month filled, August, of course, if there were any gaps within our portfolio, but they were reporting the rest of the island was 100%, it was shunting the prices right up. And like I was saying, a house that was usually fetching £1,000 a week was now they were asking for 1,500. Well, of course it's going to sit empty. And then we had the issue where it was underreporting the occupancy and it undersold in one evening by £35,000. So it had to go. And when we started diving into it, both where they were scraping their data from was the OTAs. And the OTAs were having a hissy fit with these data scrapers and were refusing to provide it. So it was reporting under occupancy. So that was causing problems. We then did even more digging, and the data for rural areas was really slack. They weren't able to get enough of the data. So that was causing an issue. So something had to change. And that's, like I said earlier on, we then eventually went down the, let's get a man who knows revenue management, let's arm him with some tools. And some of those tools were a dynamic pricing tool, which he sourced. And the others were AI, 10 screens in front of him, and now key data, the absolute cream on top.
Excellent, thank you. I'm really curious, actually. I don't know if I've asked you this before, but when you started looking at dynamic pricing tools and data suppliers, was it made aware to you at the time of you choosing them that the data source was like scrape data and the limitations of that data, or was there or is there, do you think, in the industry an expectation that is?
There's two answers to this, and I'll go back to key data. My experience with key data, okay, was I was sold key data by you and Sally, okay? And I'll come back to that in a minute. I was sold Price Labs by a salesperson, okay? I was sold Beyond Pricing by a salesperson. I was sold AirDNA by a salesperson, okay? And they sold me the world. And then they handed me over to the people that were going to do the integration of it, okay? And it was evident that those salespeople did not have the operational experience or understanding of the needs of the customer. And when they handed me over to the person that was going to integrate me, it became evident every single time that what I'd been assured and where their sources were and where all this and that was, there was so much snake oil in amongst it. You know, in this industry, there's so much snake oil. And the money that Emma and I have wasted looking and trialing and implementing some of these snake oils, the costs are eye-watering. And when we got introduced to key data, all of a sudden I'm speaking to you, James, and I'm speaking to Sally Henry, and I'm getting the truth, the accuracy, the honesty of where this information is coming. And you gave us the honest answer of, we scrape from here, we scrape from there, but we are looking at doing this and implementing this, which we've now got, as in, you know, the proper benchmarking. So it was never made clear to me where they got the information. It was always this magic dust that they would spread. Don't you worry about that, Jamie. Don't you worry about it. The information we're going to give you is going to be bob on. And it never was. And then when I went to dynamic pricing, for instance, they went, oh, don't worry about Price Labs. We got our information from so many more sources. The magic source, allegedly. Well, it didn't. They're scraping the same data from the same pots as everyone else. And so I never really understood the root sources of the data they were getting. All I knew was at the end of my experience with them, it was incorrect.
Thank you for that perspective, and thanks for trusting us, because, you know, even if we did say one thing, I could imagine your guards were up against.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
That's good. Well, thank you. And here we are, right? So that's good. Okay, so talk to me then about direct data then. So I'd love to, now that you've more recently got it, if you can let me know, I'd love to hear some unique insights that you get from it, or really just the reassurance it gives to you.
Or yours, Emma.
Thanks. I mean, there's loads to dive into it. There's still loads to dive into it. Like we've not even had it a week, I think, yet. So there's lots still to pile into. I know Eric is literally just living in it and having a whale of a time. And he sends us across, oh, have you looked how we're doing compared to 3 beds? And I'm like, yeah. So like there is some fun stuff, because then I'm like, we don't want to go too granular in case we lose some direct data and it goes back to OTA. So we're testing the limits of how granular we can get in the data before OTA data kicks in. So it's allowing us to, you know, focus on 2 beds, 3 beds in specific areas and things like that across the island, which is handy. But yeah, the whole snapshot as a whole, seeing everything, especially pacing, we've got a pacing report that Stephen very kindly helped me create. And that just allows us to see how we're performing for the rest of this year compared to our market. So, you know, it's really interesting to see, you know, Christmas already in bookings, how we're doing faring against the market. And like, I think it'll be really interesting. I think I'm excited to look at it in the new year, because January is always our biggest month for bookings. So I kind of want to see how that plays out across the industry. And then obviously looking at forward bookings, because I always like to see how many people book in advance. So like for this year, how many are booking for next year? So it's handy to compare that as well. So there's lots to pull from it.
So for me, as a business owner with a keen eye for sales and performance, I'm now looking at my key data screen with complete faith. So I'm now looking at my KPIs and going and believing that that's actually correct. And I don't feel the need to pile in and go, ooh, let's see, you know, because I have faith in the scrape. So if I got faith in where we're capturing this data from, I'm now looking at my KPIs and going, I can rest easy. You know, I have my wife, who is the financial director of the business, and I'm not saying she's tight with our money, but I'm saying she's tighter than 2 coats of paint. And when she worries about cash flow and budgeting and forecasting and everything else, and I'm looking at my key data screen and going, yeah, it'll be all right. We're all right. She doesn't. So, and I haven't set her free on key data yet. No data that she'll want that soon.
I love that. Good. So key data is making marriages easier too, which is
oh no, oh, God.
Oh, that's good. Excellent. Okay, I think you've answered all the things there. I think there's the last question there. So, at the beginning you spoke about you didn't really send things through to owners, right? It was just like emails and maybe you'd send some stuff through. And Jamie, I know you've got a wonderful relationship with them anyway, so perhaps you didn't need to. But I'd be curious to know if that's changed now, like because you're able to, do you? And also, in terms of the way, like, I know you've got these modest plans that it growing, but does that data open up new opportunities for you in terms of growth?
Yeah, and I'm looking at those. I'm looking at those opportunities now. I always known there's been this ability to send an owner's report annually, but my reticence comes from the fact that I had. It's not that I didn't have faith in key data. It's just that I knew where the data was coming from. I didn't have complete 100% faith. So when I was sending something out, I always felt like if they were to interrogate it, could I give them a factual answer? Well, I can now. So what I'm in the throes of doing is I know I can send owner reports. I know I can dissect some of this information and get it out there to them. So in due course, once Eric and Emma found their feet with the new benchmarking, I want to. We've got a few cats that we need to skin right now. We got some big problems with OTAs that I need to. We're on the cusp of making a decision as to how we deal with OTAs. You know, big project for us, unfortunately. Once that's done, I want to dig into the weeds of how I can be proactive in sending these reports and providing that right amount of information to the owners. So I don't want to bamboozle them with KPIs. I need to decide what information I want to give them, and then we will send them out as a matter of routine. And then when an owner comes to me and says, Jamie, what about my pricing? Or what about my occupancy? I want to be able to I need to get my head into it a lot more so that I can not just give them my opinion, but actually give them an attachment to an email. There's their report, and that's why we're pricing it at this. That's why your occupancy's at that. And we will do it. And on top of that, being able to get a snapshot of a screenshot of our performance as a business compared to our competition and include that in the owner's update is perfect. So when I get an owner who's got a 3-bedroom house, I can currently tell them that we are performing the best on the entire island when it comes to 3-bedroom houses. So I just want to use, I need to get my head around those tools more. And it needs a detail eye. And we will do that.
One of the key KPIs, though, that is really handy to show owners now is the owner lost opportunity.
Oh,
especially
absolutely.
when you've got owners saying, well, I want more money. Like, well, let's have a look at what you could have had if you didn't take.
So I had an owner yesterday phone me and grill me about his 182 days. And I said to him, you have lost £40,000 this year in owner lost opportunities. And he went, what? I said, 40 grand. And he went, why? I said, because between you, your son, and your daughter, you filled up X months over the years, you've lost 40 grand in lost opportunities. And they're weeks we could have sold. That's not that much. I went, mate, it's in front of me. I can send you the details if you like. So, you know, there's all sorts of little things that are coming out the woodwork that we can use as a tool. And we're still getting our head around it. But now we've got faith in that data, we can explore those options, and there's going to be plenty.
That's fantastic. That example. I mean, it's fantastic as a way of handling a difficult situation, right? So yeah. It's nice to be in that in the first place. But I think that's the point. I guess it just creeps in right from the owner's side of it. It's just one day here or there. They don't think too much of it, but it's almost like using a credit card without ever checking the balance. And after a while, you have this rude awakening. So, but great to know. Do you know what? I've got this with me. I don't know if you can see it, but obviously it's from your office. So you could include that in there, couldn't you? That says about your X% over the
absolutely.
The stuff, so.
Yeah. I'm thinking about creating a because it changes so often. I'm thinking about in the owners, prospective owners brochure you've got there, is creating a postcard which we update once every 6 months, and in there is going to be in effect our key data. So hey, look, as a prospective owner, there's our KPIs. And they keep it updated to help onboard.
And I think as well, because you've mentioned that Eric's pointed out, like where you are about above 3 bedrooms, you could, you know, depending on how you want to present that data, you say if you're a 1-bedroom, if you're a 2-bedroom, if you're a 3-bedroom, how we are versus the market. So, because otherwise it can be quite vague, right? It depends on which one you want to go with. I love that. Okay, so final part then. I know we're over, so thank you. My question here is, I think you've answered it, but it's how has key data influenced your growth strategy, like adding homes or expanding into new markets? I feel like that's covered.
I can add to that, James.
Okay, perfect.
Whilst we are busy, we're very, very busy as a business implementing new softwares, new processes, new operations manager, all these sorts of bits and pieces. So growth hasn't been our focus. We're in Wales. It's a very, very turbulent market at the moment because of all the 20 different local council and local government and assembly and UK government interventions. So we're purposely managing our existing portfolio. And where we were, and not just courtesy of key data, but other bits of software, where we were operating at 75% for each property. The softwares that we've now brought in, we are now optimizing each of those properties. So we're maximizing occupancy, we're maximizing revenues, we're maximizing our in-house services to make money as well on those properties. So rather than trying to get another 25 properties, with the use of all of these different bits of software, we've been able to maximize in each property before we take more on. So actually, let's just say, you know, we're earning £1 million. Well, we've now been able to optimize all of those properties, so we're earning £1.25 million. And so we've yet to use key data to help us onboard, but we've used key data to optimize our existing portfolio. That's where would you agree with that, Emma?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I love that. That's great answer. Is there one decision you could point to, or any example you can think of, that you've been able to make with confidence then because of key data that you just wouldn't have been able to make otherwise?
I can't think right now. I can't think of anything, but I think where it's been a little bit of a game changer is peace of mind. I can look at without sounding like a parrot. I can look at that key data screen, and it's because every day someone wants a bill paying, and someone wants something monetary wise. We need to buy a couple. We got a fleet of vehicles. I need to replace a couple of vehicles, and I'm going, oh, can we afford it? And then you look at key data and you go, yeah, we'll be fine. So I think for me, it's not so much of has it enabled me to make any key decisions. I think it's been able for me to look at it and help me have that confidence. If I can look at my bank account and I can look at key data, I can rest easy. It's, these aren't cheap businesses to run. They're really not cheap businesses to run. And when you've got that commitment and that many members of staff being able to look at your screen and say, yeah, we're okay. We're okay. And if we're not, we can identify it straight away and put some stuff right.
Would you say that it was also helpful or influenced the decision to switch to ADR and more of a short break all throughout the year? Because that was a big thing that we have done since having key data.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. A little bit of context for you, James. Our revenue manager is very used to working in the European market. So in the European market, they're gradually switching to come for a day, come for a week, come for 28 days, 365 days of the year. Whereas the UK market, even the Yanks are like that now, but in the UK market, we've been very stagnant in the fact that from the middle of July through to the middle of September, you can only come for a week, and bigger properties, you can only ever come for a week, and the portfolio used to be, that's just 4 weeks, that's just short breaks just in that period. Whereas courtesy of key data and Eric's European look on things, all but 2 of our properties now offer short breaks 365 days of the year minus May half term. The rest of it in peak periods, you can come for 5 or 7 days, I'm not going to go into the weeds of what we've done there. There's a little bit of psychology going on, but in effect, it's helped us shape how and what we offer on our short breaking policy. Having seen, Eric yesterday or a few days ago sent us a video through, and he's saying, well, actually, there's quite a bit of appetite for 1 day breaks. And I'm like, oh, really? Well, if I can sell 3 1-day breaks in 1 week in the middle of November, and return, I don't know, let's say 180% or 160% of a week rent, well, why not? So we're giving it a go. It's helping us shape that. And a quick question for you, James, actually. Have you noticed that shift across the UK?
In terms of the
short break policy?
The short break policy. We're in a bit of a bubble almost. I would say I am, because the working in short-term rentals, the kind of companies that I've done business with over the past 10 years have been by the limitation or the focus of the software I've been selling. It's been focused on daily and short terms. So but in my conversations, I've definitely had more arguments back then and fewer now in terms of why they should switch to a daily policy. So that to me indicates a general change across the industry. I'm still amazed. I would tell you, I'm more astounded now when I find large companies that have a policy that's fixed on a certain number of stays, you know, when it's like that's all they have. When you go on websites and you look at the prices, and it will have a calendar, not an interacting, you can't interact with a calendar. It's not a booking calendar. It's a calendar that says, you know, from January to April, this is the rate for a weekly stay.
Yeah.
Like,
wow, it's still like that.
Yeah, it's like a holiday, what do you call it? Like a resort, right? You know, like with that kind of static pricing. It's just so rare to see. So if I see that in what looks like a short-term operator, but with this pricing, just doesn't seem as compatible now. And but so generally, I would say, oh, I don't know how anecdotal it is, but massive switch towards that. And Airbnb's helped drive a lot of that as well, just because of the way you list the prices. So. But as you said there, there's certain properties that you'll want to restrict, and there's certain length of stays, definitely. But from a pricing perspective, it's daily rates and it's ADR that's the measure of that now. Yeah. But I'd absolutely go for the 1 day ones, right? I came from car rentals before, and that's what we used to do. You price a 1 day car rental at the cost of a 4 day car rental because of all of the added costs.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If you get it, you're like, great, okay. And you're not, it's about who you're encouraging to book that 1 day rental as well, right? That's a whole other ballpark. So that's interesting. Great. So final question, and this is one that helps me out, because I'm going to ask you to talk directly to my potential future customers. It's essentially, if you were talking to another property manager who's on the fence, how would you explain to them the impact Key Data's had on your business?
I'll let you have a couple of sentences first, Emma.
Well, yeah, I mean, do they know how much time they currently spend obtaining the information and the data they want to make decisions? You know, do you know how much time goes towards pulling that information from your PMS, and how much time it takes to analyze it? And the amount of time you will save switching to Key Data is outstanding and insane, because it saved me hours a week and hours monthly and weeks over a year. Like, if you don't know how much time is being spent pulling the data for you to make decisions, figure it out. But find out how much time is being, not only to get that and obtain that information, but then how much time do you spend to analyze it? And the Key Data will just do it like that for you, and it just saves an insane amount of time. That's the biggest thing for me. It saved me hours and allows me just to do so much more with my day now.
So I think if there is anyone out there right now that was doing what I was doing, our industry has got lots of businesses our size, and I completely understand the 1,000 spinning plates that are going on. But it's very easy to forget that whilst you are spinning those operational plates, those marketing, revenue, and all these other things that make your business operate, it's easy to forget that occupancy and revenue holds your business together. And without an detailed understanding of your performance as a business, what your KPIs are and how they're performing, you are working blind. So now I have utter faith that I'm hitting my occupancy, I'm hitting my revenues, I've got enough guest check-ins coming in, I can coordinate my teams easier with all this information at hand. So without key data, I am going back to spin 1,000 plates. I have got complete reassurance that everything around me is working. So if you haven't got key data, you genuinely really need to have a serious look at that. And if you need to know more, pick mine and Emma's brains.